So over in my terminal, I'm just going to create a new Laravel 8 project, and I'm using the Laravel command line tool to do this. So I'm just going to do Laravel new, and I'm just going to call this project Fortify, and there's nothing new there, it's just everything as you normally would expect. So let's cd into that new project, and the first thing I'm going to do is bring in that new Laravel Fortify package. So I can do a composer require, and I want to require Laravel /Fortify. Now that package is installed, I'm just going to quickly open this up in PHP Storm and let's take a look at the project. So over in our project, if we come down to resources and views, you can see the only view that we currently have is our welcome view. So when we're using Laravel Fortify, we need to make all the views ourselves. Now if you do have an older Laravel project, you can actually copy them across into this new Laravel 8 project if you wish, and that'll give you a good starting point to get started with using Laravel Fortify. You don't have to use them, you can write them completely from scratch, that's not a problem, and I'll be showing you everything you need to put in them view files to get this working. So the next thing we need to do is publish the assets for Laravel Fortify. So we can do that with a PHP artisan, and we can do a vendor publish, and we want to publish the provider, and that is going to be equal to the Laravel //Fortify //Fortify service provider. And there we go, we can see that has now copied everything across that Laravel Fortify needs, and it's published them into our project. So over in our project under app providers, we can now see we have the Fortify service provider in our project. And if we just open up this service provider for Fortify, we can see down in the boot method, it gives us some things out the box, like creating a user and resetting the passwords. The next thing we need to do is register this service provider within our application. So under config and app.php, we can just scroll down until we reach our providers. Now we just need to register that new provider. So on a new line we can do app providers, and we want to register the Fortify service provider class. So that is now registered within our project. So if we come over to our terminal again and we just do a PHP artisan root :list. Sorry, I can't get all these on my screen because my font's so big for the recording. But anyway, you can see here we have some routes in place that Fortify has generated automatically for us. And these consist of general user management and also our register and login routes that we're going to be most interested in during this video series. Now back over in our application, if we look under config, we now have a Fortify config file here. Let's take a look at this. And we can see there's various settings here that Fortify needs. Now some of the noteworthy configurations here is the username. Now by default in the past, Laravel has authenticated against the email address on the users table. Now if you've got a custom field that you're authenticating against, I've seen a lot of Laravel applications that actually create a field on the user table actually called username. So if you have done something like that and you want to authenticate against that, then this is where you put it. But for most people, email's just fine because that is the default, and that is what the majority of Laravel applications use. Also worth noting here is the home path, and this is the route people are redirected to once they've registered or they've had a successful login. So the default is home, and I'm just going to leave it at that, but just be wary that if you want to redirect the user somewhere else after logging in or registering, then this is where you change it. And then finally down the bottom we have a features array. So in here you can turn on and turn off various different features of Fortify. So right now to begin with, we're only going to be looking at the login and registration. So for now, I'm just going to comment these out and just leave the registration feature enabled. Now maybe later in this video series, and if there's enough interest, we may look at each of these individual features and how we can implement them in our own front end. So if we come back over to our terminal and we run our route list again, we can now see a lot of them routes are now disabled because we've not enabled them in the config. Then to get this working, we also need to set up a database. So over in the env file, you need to make sure you got your database credentials set up. So I'm just going to quickly fill these in for me. So I've got a database ready to go called Fortify. My username is root and my password is also root. Then finally, back over in the terminal, we can do a PHP artisan migrate. And then that just creates the migrations that Fortify needs for the users table and its related functionality. So we just spin up a development server here quickly with a PHP artisan serve. And if I just head over to it in the browser and try and hit that /login route, you'll see that you'll probably get an error. And this is because we haven't told Fortify what view the login route should use. So back over in our Fortify service provider, and that's under App Providers, Fortify Service Provider. We want to let Fortify know what routes we want to set for our register and login. So to do that, we can just do a Fortify, and then we can call the login view, and this takes in a closure, so we can just pass it in a function, and then inside of here we just return the view that we want it to use. So we can just do a return view, and I've not created these yet, but I'm going to put them into an auth folder, and I'm going to call the login one login. That seems to make the most sense. And then again for our register view, we can just call Fortify, and we can call register view, and again that's another closure, and then again simply we just return a view, and I'm going to call this one auth.register, and we'll be creating these shortly. So if we come back over to our application and hit the refresh, we can see now we get a different error, and it's saying our view auth login is not found. And that's because we haven't actually created it yet. But at least we know now that Fortify is reading our routes and routing it correctly, looking for our views. So in the next video, I'm going to set up Bootstrap and create these views. Now, like I said, Fortify is completely front-end agnostic. So if you want to use something else, you're absolutely welcome to, and you don't have to watch me setting up Bootstrap. But if you do want to follow along and get a good feel for Fortify, then I recommend that you do follow along with Bootstrap, and then when you're confident with Fortify, then move on to a framework that you prefer.